Hello guys, this is Saruto Uchiha Storm here and welcome to my channel. Today I am doing Naruto Redemption of Dragon King. Please like and subscribe to my channel.
Chapter 9 Father-Daughter Bonding Time. Fairy Tale Guild, Magnolia. Master Mavis was sitting in a small clearing in the surrounding forests around the guild. She was currently staring up at the clear, blue skies, simply enjoying the tranquility. Today was so peaceful, she mused. She hoped all days could be as peaceful, but she knew that this type of peace was only temporary. She was cut from her thoughts when she heard a cough. She looked to see in front of her were Gildarts and Makarov. The Titan and Ace of Fairy Tale wished to speak with her about something important. She was curious by the request, but agreed to it, nonetheless. She got more surprised when Makarov placed silencing and illusion runes to keep whatever was spoken here as secret as possible. Mavis wondered what did they need to speak about that with such high security. Whatever it was, must have been very serious. Master Mavis, I am glad you took your time to listen to my request to speak to you. Makarov finally said. Mavis just giggled. I am a spirit, Rokudame. I have all the time in the world. Makarov nodded. Yes, there are two things we need to discuss. First, a fellow wizard saint, Juranikis, told me some very important information. He told me that my son, Ivan Drayar, has become active after 7 years of hibernation, along with his dark guild, Raven Tail. Mavis frowned, knowing already about Makarov's son, and how he was forced to excommunicate him, because of his actions being a danger to the guild. The problem is that when he left, he had some classified information on Fairy Tale. Mavis narrowed her eyes in concern about how much did Ivan truly know. Does he know about Lumen Histoire? Mavis asked, knowing full well the repercussions of that coming out. It would be disastrous for not only the guild but the rest of the world. Makarov just shook his head. I am not sure. He has not released or done anything that proves he knows about it. Even if he did know, he knows that is one secret that must be kept secret. Mavis then asked, do you plan to do anything about him? She was surprised when he shook his head. At the moment, nothing. Ivan has done nothing to the guild or exposed any secrets of it. So, I would like to keep it this way. Please understand, Master Mavis. Gildarts then stepped up. Makarov showed me the Lumen History when he wanted me to become the Master of Fairy Tale, but I promised to keep that a secret to my grave. You have my word, Master Mavis. Mavis smiled before nodding that she understood. Now then, is there anything else you would like to discuss? She asked. Makarov and Gildarts turned to look at one another before both looked at Mavis with serious expressions. Yes, we would ask you about Wendy and her father, Gildarts said. Mavis's eyes widened before she closed them and sighed. This was inevitable, so she might as well settle this. So the two of you figured it out? The two nodded. I first thought something was off when I explained my battle with Acnologia. She looked really invested in the story, but both me and the master thought it was because she was a dragonslayer and wanted to know anything that may involve the dragons. Gildarts explained. Makarov then continued from there. The next odd occurrence was when Acnologia attacked. She seemed overjoyed to see him. This confused me as to why she would be happy to see that thing. Dragon. Makarov corrected when he saw Mavis's angry scowl. I also saw a red glow under her shirt when Acnologia arrived. Again, I ignored all this when we all fought the black dragon. What confused me was that Acnologia had plenty of opportunities to kill me and the rest of the guild, but he did not finish me or anyone else off. Then the last thing we learned was when Wendy explained her necklace to Natsu and the others, and that it was her father who gave it to her. Myself and Gildarts eavesdropped on the conversation by mistake, but we were too suspicious of Wendy's behavior after we returned from Tenro. It all just leads to the same conclusion Gildarts and I have reached. The two then looked at Mavis seriously. Master Mavis, is Wendy Marvell the daughter of Acnologia? Makarov asked. Mavis looked at the two seriously before sighing and looking down. Leave it for you two to have figured it out. I should not be surprised since someone would have figured out. She then looks up at the two. Yes, Acnologia's true name is Naruto Marvell. He is Wendy's biological father. The two men remained in shocked silence. While they had some suspicion, having it proven factual was something else entirely. Makarov merely sighed before pinching his nose in exhaustion. Sometimes I wish I did not have such an analytical mind. There are some things better left in the dark. Gildarts nodded in agreement. Both men wondered what kind of life Wendy had before being that dragon's child. More importantly, what kind of woman would have the power to ensnare Acnologia into her bed to conceive a child? It was mind-boggling and honestly frightening. They definitely did not want to meet the woman who had the power to do that. The two were taken out of their thoughts when Mavis spoke. So now that you know the truth, what do you plan to do? Will you question her about it? Will you kick her out of the guild? Will you deliver her to the council? The two looked at the first master in shock. However, the look she gave them to let them know she was being serious showed them. How can you ask something so ridiculous? We don't care about Wendy's past. She could be the daughter of the devil and Cammy, but we wouldn't care. She's fairy tale, she's one of us, she's family. Makarov ranted passionately. Gildarts had a steel gaze that said he agreed with everything the master said. Mavis looked at the two men with critical eyes looking for any type of deceit. When she was sure there was none of that, she sighed in relief before smiling at the two. Thank goodness. I can see that you two of you meant every word of it. The two men nodded. Of course, we are, master. We're always truthful when it comes to our family. Gildarts said with a smile. Mavis looked at the two kindly. I know. But you must understand, Naruto Ni did not want anyone to know about his child. The dangers that child would be in were too high for him to risk her identity being known to the rest of the world. Mavis explained. Both the Titan and Ace nodded in understanding. If word ever got out that one of the most powerful beings known to all of Earthland had an unguarded child, the hell that would ensue would be unimaginable. They then took notice of how Mavis addressed Acnologia, Naruto. Master Mavis, why did you address Acnologia as Naruto Ni? Makarov asked with confusion. Mavis frowned sadly remembering her time with her brother, Protector, before shaking it away. Gomen, but I can't tell you my history with Naruto Ni. I swore to never speak about his past or our relationship without his consent, and I intend to keep that way until we officially meet again. The two men frowned but knew that Mavis was entitled to her own secrets, but there was one thing they want to confirm. Master Mavis, does Acnologia pose a threat to Wendy or anyone else from Fairy Tail? Mavis shook her head. No. Naruto Ni worships the ground that Wendy's mother stood on. He sees that woman as a goddess, and he would commit suicide before harming the last thing he has of his first wife. As for Fairy Tail, he will not harm us so long as we do nothing against Wendy. How many know about his identity and about his child? Makarov. Right now, the people that know about their identities are you two, myself, the Celestial Spirit King, Wendy, Zeref, Rubol, and the dragons that raised Dragonslayers are the only ones that I know of. The two men nodded in understanding. The two men asked if he had other children, but Mavis said that Acnologia had been very ambiguous when answering that question. So the answer could be yes or no. The two men wondered if there were other kids, who they were, and if they knew the truth of their lineage. Then Gildarts asked something the two men had wondering. Wait, does Acnologia plan to make any contact with Wendy? Mavis just smiled in response. Well, he already has made contact with Wendy. What? The two men shouted in shock. Mavis then explained how Natsu's group went to the beach to train, and how Naruto appeared before Wendy. She explained how she eavesdropped on their conversation and Naruto's decision to train Wendy to prepare for the games. Makarov and Gildarts just looked at the first master with their jaws on the floor. Makarov was the first to regain his voice. You're telling me that right now Wendy is with her estranged father. The same father was known as the Black Dragon of the Apocalypse. This same dragon is training her to improve her Dragonslayer magic for the Grand Magic Games. Yup, Mavis enthusiastically. The two were stunned. They always knew that Wendy had great potential to be a powerful mage, especially since she was a Dragonslayer. But if her father was teaching her, they couldn't imagine how powerful she would become from this. Master Mavis, I have one question. Mavis nodded for Gildarts to continue. What exactly is Acnologia after? What does he gain from all this? What exactly does he want in the end? Mavis thought about how to answer, before replying, I am not what exactly he wants in the end, but I have an idea of what he gains from training Wendy. The two were listening intently. He wants to spend time with Wendy. He wants to make up for the lost while helping her to be the strongest mage she can possibly be. As for what his current goal is, Naruto Ni wants to kill Zeref. This shocked the two, that's why he appeared on Tenro that day. He hates Zeref with a burning passion. It's a grudge that has been going on for over 400 years. Zeref did something to him, and Naruto Ni won't stop until he sees Zeref's bleeding corpse wedged in his claws. Mavis frowned remembering how much hatred Naruto held for the Black Mage for what happened during the war. She knew that Naruto had every right to seek retribution, but she did not want him to be consumed by that thirst for revenge. Makarov raised his arm in question. Showed him, what exactly happened between Acnologia and Zeref? Mavis just sighed. Trust me, it's a long story that truly shows that this world is not simply black and white. Both of them went through unimaginable hell to get where they are now, but Naruto got the raw end of the deal from the climax of the war. That war caused him to become the so-called enemy to all of humanity for the last 400 years. The two men remained silent, wondering what type of hell did Acnologia go through to become who he is now, and if Wendy could have any influence on that man. Master Mavis, can you show us what he looks like as a human? We're curious about his appearance. Mavis smiled at Gildart's question and used her magic to create an ethereal image of Naruto when he still only wore a simple cloak and baggy pants. Needless to say, it was not what the two mages expected. What the hell? He looks no older than Laxus. Hell, he looks younger. This is the guy that my arm and leg? This is the so-called dragon of the apocalypse? Gildarts ranted off incredulously. Even Makarov was having a tough time believing this was the man, or boy, that caused his family so much grief and pain. So his name is Naruto, huh? Guess I would change my name too if my name meant fishcake. Gildarts chuckled out, while Mavis just giggled. You should have seen his face when I said the same thing. He got so annoyed that he went ranting off about his name meaning maelstrom, not fishcake. Though I found it too funny and gave him the nickname, Fishy Knee. The three promptly laughed at the ridiculous name she had given to the blonde. Well, we better head off back to the guild. Everyone must be wondering where we are. The two masters nodded. The two thanked Mavis for her time, but she just waved her hand saying it was her pleasure. The runes were dismissed and soon the trio went off to return to the guild. Gildarts said it was time for him to go pick up that custom order he requested from Rush Valley, while the two masters waved him goodbye, and to be safe on his journey. I wonder how you're doing, Fishy Knee, Mavis thought as she returned to the guild alongside Makarov. Sabertooth Guild? Hey, did you hear? They said that the fairy tale members that disappeared 7 years ago have returned. One man spoke. Yeah, I heard that too. I wonder if they compete in the Grand Magic Games. Another man spoke. No way, even if those core members did come back, they're still the worst guild in the country. A female spoke cynically. I don't know, those fairies can be a real stubborn bunch. The first man spoke. Well, being stubborn won't win them the games. Spoke to the female. We'll just have to wait and see. The second retorted. As the three friends continued to drink but failed to notice that other members of their guild were listening to their conversation. Two of these men had been listening to the conversation ever since fairy tale was mentioned. One had pale spiky blonde hair and the other had messy black hair that nearly reached his shoulders. Both were young men in their late teens with average body builds. These two were Sting and Rogue, the twin dragonslayers of Sabertooth, the current holder of the #1 guild in Fury. So Natsu-san and the other came back, and are competing in the games, eh? I am actually looking forward to these games this year. What about you, Rogue? The blonde, Sting, asked his companion. Not interested, Rogue retorted. Sting just sweat-dropped. Whatever you say, pretty boy. I'm sure that tune of yours will change when you see Gajeel. He replied back. Rogue just scoffed before walking away. Sting just sighed before looking at his drink. I finally get to meet you face to face, Natsu. I'll show you who the true Dragonslayers are. Unknown location in Fury. Makarov. The time has come for me to crush you, Ivan Drayar said. The world will know the power of Raven Tail. And at long last, the Lumen Histoire will be mine, and then the rest of the world. Unknown mountain range in Fury. Hey, did you hear? The fairy tale members that disappeared have come back, spoke a girl in her late teens with hot pink hair tied in a ponytail with ruby red eyes. She wore a navy blue cloak that blocked the view of what she was wearing. One of her two companions spoke. Really? That means Natsu, Gray, and the others have come back as well. Spoke the female of the two. She had raven hair with red eyes and wore the same cloak. The first girl seems to get even more excited. We should go see them, all. Come on, please. We can help get stronger for the Grand Magic Games. What do you think, Jelal? You can see Erza again too, she said excitingly. The man with shaggy blue and a red tattoo on his eye looked at his two companions in deep thought. You really think they would compete after just coming back after being gone for 7 years? He asked them. Sure, fairy tale was reckless and unpredictable, but they weren't that reckless. Were they? The two women just giggled. Jelal, this is fairy tale we're talking about. If they are anything like we used to know, they'll jump at the chance to show off themselves. Ultir said. Jelal chuckled. I guess you're right, but they have been gone for 7 years. The world has moved on without them. They won't stand much of a chance against the stronger mages. Merity then spoke up. That's why we should help them. Ultir can help them achieve second origin. That should help them be a match for most of the competition. Jelal scratched his chin in thought, considering his young companion's suggestion. You have a point. That could definitely give them the boost they'll need. Plus we could use this as the time to take a break from our hunting activities. The other two nodded. The three of them have been hunting demons, dark guilds, and any connection to Zeref for nearly 7 years. A nice reunion with old friends would be a nice change of pace for them. Plus we can tell them about what we've felt throughout those 7 years during the games and around Fiori. They can be our spies for any suspicious activities. Altair said. Jelal also looked at the two with a smirk on his lips. Well, then I guess it's unanimous. Let's go see where those members are located right now. Merity shouted in excitement. Yeah, I can't wait to see Juvia-chan. Merity shouted in joy before running off ahead. Jelal and Altair just laughed a bit at the girl's antics. Your daughter is as energetic as ever. Jelal finally said when he calmed down from the laughter. Altair just nodded. I wouldn't have her any other way. Come on Dad, we need to catch up to her before she gets herself into trouble again. Plus I know how excited you are to see Erza again. Altair playfully teased before running off to catch up to her daughter. Ha, 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 he responded before going after the two girls. Forest area in a beach resort. A black portal opened and two figures came out. One was dressed in a black cloak with his hood down exposing his blonde hair to the bright rays of the sun. Naruto then looks at his companion. She was a petite girl that barely reached past his waist. She had her hair in pigtails and wore a green scaled dress. Wendy noticed her father's look and merely gave a cheeky grin in response. Naruto just chuckled and patted her on the head, which resulted in an annoyed pout from a said girl. Naruto just continued to look at his daughter with pride. They had finally completed their training camp with a few days to spare before the games begin and 1 day before her friends would return from the celestial spirit world. Wendy had surpassed every expectation that he had for her. She truly inherited his stubbornness and his ingenuity. They managed to increase her offense spells, and not just for her Dragonslayer magic, but also for normal spells that fell under her wind affinity to give her more options for magic attacks. She also managed to gain an acceptable level of control of her drive mode and Dragon Force forms. She was even able to make amazing progress with her Dark Half's powers, but she still does not have full control, but the progress she made in less than 1 year was still astounding. Now he may have gone a bit overboard trying to get her to control her dragon from, but you could never be too cautious, especially when it involves Dragonslayers. Plus he did not want to risk Wendy losing control without having some experience in controlling that power. Wendy had made progress with her relationship with her dark half, but she said her other half was still being a little bit stubborn, but willing to cooperate as long as they can get stronger and stand on the top. As for her shinobi training, what could he say? His Chibi-Heim passed with flying colors. While he couldn't teach her everything, he did teach her all the basics he knew about control, stealth, trap making, seals, and many other things that he had already incorporated into their training camp. He also taught Wendy some of the skills that Hinata was proficient in. Wendy took it all like a fish to water. Naruto was cut from his musings when they reached a clearing in the forest to the beach and saw several people rushing past them. Hurry up, today's the last day of the carnival. Yeah, I know, I even heard there's gonna be fireworks tonight. Oh, this is gonna be fun. And to think, this is just a pre-celebration for the Grand Magic Games. Not that is something I can't wait to see. The group continued their rush, leaving behind Naruto and Wendy to their own thoughts. A carnival, huh? Haven't seen one since my time in Konoha and they weren't really pleasant, so I stayed away from any celebrations in the village. I wonder what Wendy thinks. He looks down to get his daughter's opinion but immediately regrets it when he sees the look on her face. Her face was all puckered up, her eyes were big and wide, her hands were clapped together, and her lips were quivering. It was the most dreaded attack any female could know and has affected any man that has been struck with it. Even his father, Thorin, fell prey to it whenever his wife used it. He would even admit to falling to the attack when Hinata, Anna, and the others used it on him. It was the dreaded puppy-eyed attack. Naruto had to sweat drop at Wendy's usage, knowing exactly what she wants. He sighs before smirking at her. Alright, I get the hint. You want to spend our last day at the carnival, right? He asks. She nodded quickly. Alright, you win. You can drop the eyes. Wendy grew a big smile before grabbing her father's hand and dragging him to the market area of the beach resort. Let's go buy some clothes. We have to look nice for tonight, she said with stars in her eyes. Hell yeah, we need to make sure we empty that old man's pockets. Dark Wendy said. I agree. Wendy thought before giggling evilly with her counterpart. Naruto heard the giggling and had a bigger sweat dropped. Maybe he opened Wendy up a bit too much from her shell. She was getting a little too cheeky, and her dark half was not making it easier. Somehow I know this may be a bad idea, but I'll let it slide. As long as I can make Wendy smile, I'll manage. A few hours later, hurry up 2-chan. Wendy yelled to Naruto, hi, hi. That was the response he got. Wendy wore a white no-sleeve dress with a red bow around her neck and waist. She had red clips holding her pigtails and wore brown boots with white stockings. She looked at her dad casually walking behind at a leisurely pace. Naruto was not much for colorful clothing and went with the basic black. Yet he made it work all too well. He wore a black shirt under a black, short-sleeve jacket. He wore black jeans with a chain dangling from one side of the jeans. He wore shin-high, black boots. His green necklace was outshining the world. He wore 2 bracelets consisting of black beads on each arm. He had a skull ring on his left index finger and a silver one with a fire pattern on his ring finger, and finally, he had black earrings with silver dragon heads on them. Think of the default clothing for Noctis in Final Fantasy XV. The earrings are the ones Cloud wore in Advent Children, I believe. All in all, Wendy thought her dad looked awesome, although she wished her dad picked brighter colors, but at least he made black look good. She also noticed he was not holding any of the shopping bags they bought, which means he probably stored them away in his pocket dimension. She had to mentally pout at that. Ceiling was too convenient for her tastes. She wanted to see her dad struggle with the load as they were walking around. Here, here, sister, her dark half replied. She shook her head from the thoughts she was having. Damn it, I am turning into a sadist, thanks a lot 2-chan. She mentally scolded. Oh come on, it can't be all bad. Plus we weren't causing him harm. We just wanted to see him suffer a bit carrying our luggage. That makes him sound like a servant. Need I remind you, he's our dad. He's expected to deal with annoying shit like this on a daily basis, and put up with it with a smile on his face. I doubt we are a normal father-daughter pair. Wendy retorted. So what? Normal is overrated. Plus he's making the effort, so that is all that should matter. Now we need to focus on the quickest way to empty his pockets. Hi, Wendy thought before she yelled at someone flicking her forehead. She looked up to see her father smirking at her. Now what are you and your other self scheming, my chibi Himes? He said with a knowing look. Wendy blushed, knowing she had been busted. Abort mission. We've been compromised. Dark Wendy screamed. Nothing 2-chan. Wendy responded rather loudly. Naruto chuckled. Wendy just grabbed his hand and dragged him forward, all the while he was chuckling in amusement. While walking through the different stands, Wendy noticed all of the people staring at them in amusement. However, she noticed many of the ones looking at them were females. And all of them were giving her father looks. Looks like she recognized easily. They were looks filled with lust. A frown appeared on her face. While she had no problem were her dad having some fun, because seriously he needed it, she was not about to let some stranger get into her father's pants. That was reserved for Anna Kachin and Auntie Irene. Wendy's face glowed red before she quickly shook away the blush. She really should not be thinking these thoughts. They were too weird and inappropriate for her. She blamed her dad for this. Ever since the talk she had with him about sex, she could not help but look and admire some of the guys she was seeing. Hell, many of the guys in her guild were quite the lookers as well. Some of the girls were not bad on the eyes either. Dark Wendy replied. Wendy blushed again hearing what her dark half thought. She really did not want anyone to know what her dark half was thinking. She just wanted to focus on one boy in her mind. Yes, focus on him and the dreams we can have of him once we claim him as ours. Please stop, we'll be too young to think such thoughts. Wendy said desperately in her mind. Unfortunately, that was in vain because Dark Wendy would use any opportunity she could to tease Wendy. What did your dad say about being a shinobi? Old enough to drink, old enough to kill, old enough to torture, and of course, old enough to have sex. The most important one, she said gleefully at the end. I am pretty sure that was not the most important one. Wendy replied dryly. Dark just snorted. So? You heard what he told us. Shinobi have a short life expectancy. Hell, mages take huge risks as well with the jobs we take. Maybe so, but I would like to keep some of the purity for a few more years. Dark Wendy just scoffed again. Please, our mother was our age when she lost it, and let's not forget about how our dad said mom had similar perverted thoughts like you are having right now. Dark replied, knowing he got her this time. Wendy nearly fell forward remembering how her dad said Hinata Okasama was bi-curious, which he was thankful for creating the sexy transformation to please her. Something she hoped no one would ever ask for. Worse was that Anna and Irene were in the same boat. And it was all thanks to her father. Seriously, were all of her mother's aunts bi-curious as well, because of her father and one damn transformation? Just think about it. All the fun we can have with our boyfriend and bringing a cute female friend to enjoy the fun as well. By this point, Wendy had to stop and control the blood coming out of her nose. If she got any more ideas into her head she just might lose it. Wendy? She looked to see her father looking at her blankly. Why yes? If you're gonna have perverted thoughts about your boyfriend and or girlfriend, please wait until we are alone and not in public. He's not my boyfriend yet. Wendy yelled with her face completely red. Naruto smiled and raised an eyebrow. Yet, Wendy clasped her hands over her mouth, as her face lit up like a Christmas tree and steam was coming out of her head and ears. Ha 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 ha, told you so, you do want him as your boy toy. Dark continued to roar in laughter at Wendy's predicament. This was the one thing she hated about her father. When he found out she had a crush on a boy, he did not forbid her from seeing him. Nope, as his name suggests, he did something unpredictable. He teased her about it. Seriously, her dark side teasing her is one thing, her dad doing it was crossing the line. Well, it was crossing the line in her cute, little mind. She shook her head and looked away with a cheery red face. Can we please just keep going? She asked desperately. Naruto smirked at how cute she looked, embarrassed. It was just too much fun teasing her. Like her mother's, he thought nostalgically. Deciding he teased her enough, for now, he grabbed her hand and showed her around the carnival. As they were walking along when one of the game stands got their attention. It was a test your strength hammer game. The carny of this game was boasting enthusiastically to his audience. Come all. See how strong you truly are. Use our hammer to slam the platform. Hit the bell and win a wonderful prize. The man then took notice of Naruto and Wendy. How about you, young man? Test your mettle and win a prize for the young girl. Everyone turned to Naruto, and several females and even some males gained a blush on their faces, while many other men and females glared at him in envy. Naruto ignored the looks and turned to his daughter. What do you think, Wendy? This causes the announcer and several others to laugh mockingly at the duo. Oh, how cute. Can't do anything without asking the young loss? Naruto smirked and decided to humor the fool. He steps forward and asks for the heaviest hammer. The announcer smirked confidently before going to his stand and getting the hammer and handing it to Naruto. Naruto that the hammer was quite big. Easily the size of his head. He also noticed that the hammer was heavier than it looked. The carny must have added more weight inside the hammer to make it less likely for someone to win. Naruto mentally shook his head at the foolish human. It was time for a little humiliation. Naruto walks over to the platform and smirks. Naruto raises the hammer with both arms and over his head and, wham! The hammer smashed on the platform, sending the bar sailing up and smashing into the bell and completely destroying both of them. Thankfully he held back, or else he would have destroyed more than just the bell and bar. He looked to see everyone's jaws on the floor. Well, the guys anyway, the women all had hearts in his eyes, and many began screaming for his hand in marriage or to have his children. Naruto just sweat dropped at the shallow women's boasts. He turned to his daughter and noticed Wendy's blank look. Naruto's sweat drop got bigger. Okay, maybe he did show off a bit too much. But he simply shrugged and walked towards the host. The host just looked flabbergasted. He trembled when he saw the feral smile on the blonde's face. My prize. Naruto finally said. What? The man asked in fear. My prize. Naruto repeated. I won, right? The host just began to sweat even more. Why yes, we have a winner, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, he gets the bonus of winning 2 prizes. Everyone screamed in agreement, seeing the amazing test of strength. Naruto just smiled and looked at his daughter. Wendy, come pick your prizes, now. Wendy had stars and quickly found what she wanted. She too took her prizes and showed Naruto and everyone else what she picked. Naruto was surprised and so was the audience. Wendy chose an orange fox and a black dragon that looked a lot like Acnologia. Naruto and the audience looked a little dumbfounded. Are you sure? Naruto asked. Wendy nodded. Loss, I am surprised with the fox, but are you sure about that dragon? He's not really the most friendly dragon around. Naruto and several others snorted at that remark. Understatement of the century, Naruto muttered. Wendy nodded again. Yeah, I am sure. The two may look ferocious on the outside, but both are just big softies on the inside. Wendy said cheekily. That caused several people to laugh outright. Acnologia gentle, ha, the next thing they'll hear is that he is a loving parent. Naruto sneezed, knowing exactly who was talking about him at that very moment. He looked at Wendy before shaking his head in amusement, before grabbing her so they can go to the next stand. Naruto keeps walking until something catches his interest. A smell he had not smelled in a long time. He looked to see a fairly large ramen stand and it was empty. He looked at Wendy but was surprised to see her gone. He looks around, but sweat drops when he sees her at a ramen stand. It seems Wendy also gained his love for ramen along with Hinata's love for cinnamon buns. That gives Naruto an idea and quickly finds the closest sweet stand. Wendy meanwhile just ordered 2 bowls of ramen, 1 miso ramen and the largest bowl of ramen with everything on it for her dad. Are you sure you can handle such big bowls, little girl? The cook asks. The big one is for my dad, he must have one hell of an appetite. Wendy giggled. You have no idea. Very funny, my chibi-hime. Naruto spoke. Wendy turned and smiled at Naruto. Hey daddy, sit. I already ordered. Alright, no need to be so bossy. Wendy glared in annoyance. I am not bossy. Naruto smirked. Ha ha ha, I can definitely see the family dynamic here. The cook joked. I'll take that as a compliment, Naruto remarked while smirking. Hey, you don't mind answering a personal question? Naruto cocked an eyebrow in curiosity but shrugged. It was a question. What's the worst that could happen? Why do you look so young and be that girl's father? My magic. It has been passed throughout my family for generations. It gives us large amounts of vitality, which equates to large amounts of magical reserves, regeneration, unrivaled stamina, and long-lasting lifespans. I may look around my late teens or early 20s, but I am actual around my 40s. Naruto lied. Well, it wasn't a technical lie since everything he said is a fact for a member of the Uzumaki family clan with some tweaks to work in this world. Even if he no longer acknowledges the name as his own, he still gains their wondrous benefits. Among other benefits, of course. Damn, that is some magic. Think you share some of that? The cook asked. Naruto shook his head. Sorry old man, family only and it's not something that can be given. He replied, old man? I'll have you know I am quite fit for a man in his 60s. Naruto and Wendy just laughed at the cook's antics. The two received their order and began to enjoy their bowls of ramen. Naruto just sighed as the ramen went down his throat. It's the same as it has always been. It's like nothing has changed. It's as good as always Titibeo, Naruto muttered. Fortunately, Wendy heard that and looked at her father in shock before getting a big smile and cheering in victory. Finally. She shouted, I was wondering when we were gonna get him to say it. Dark muttered with a tone of satisfaction. Naruto looked at his daughter strangely. What? He asks. Wendy pointed a finger at him excitingly. You said it. Naruto just looked even more confused. Said what? Your old verbal tick. I have been thinking of so many ways to get you to say it. And you finally said it while eating your old addiction. Naruto just sweat dropped. How long have you been thinking of this? He asks. Ever since I first heard about it from your stories and your memories. Naruto's sweat drop just got bigger. Let me guess this straight. For months you have been plotting to get me to say my old catchphrase just for your own satisfaction? He asks slowly. Wendy blushed before scratching the back of her head. Well, when you put it that way, it sounds kinda dumb. Wendy yelps when her forehead is flicked again by her father. It is dumb, but coming from you, it's absolutely adorable. Wendy glared at him before going back to her bowl and finishing her meal. The two finished their bowls and left once Naruto paid. The two kept walking before seeing a roller coaster. Thankfully both could enjoy the ride without getting motion sickness. Wendy seriously had to thank her father for the anti-motion sickness seals her father gave her. They were really a lifesaver for her. She then saw a karaoke bar. Naruto was hesitant to go inside, but eventually yielded to his daughter's plea. The two were enjoying the horrendous attempts of people trying to sing while eating a triple banana split sundae with several flavors of ice cream, vanilla, chocolate, caramel, and cinnamon with sprinkles. It would never stop surprising Wendy how much of a sweet tooth her father is. She guessed he got that from Hinata Okasama. Suddenly the lights showed on Naruto. That only meant one thing. It was Naruto's turn to sing. Everyone was cheering him on to get on stage. Naruto was about to decline, but one look from Wendy told him otherwise. He sighed before going up and taking the mic. He takes a few minutes looking for a good song, before finding the perfect one. He stares at his rather large audience. He takes a deep breath and begins. Insert song. Nate wants to battle simple and clean. When you walk away, you don't hear me say please, oh baby, don't go. Simple and clean is the way that you're making me feel tonight. It's hard to let it go. You're giving me too many things, lately. You're all I need. You smiled at me and said, don't get me wrong, I love you, but does that mean I have to meet your father? When we are older you'll understand what I meant when I said no. I don't think life is quite that simple when you walk away. You don't hear me say please oh baby, don't go. Simple and clean is the way that you're making me feel tonight. It's hard to let it go. It's hard to let it go. Like this and that and what that keep us all busy, all confusing me. That's when you came to me and said, wish I could prove I love you, but does that mean I have to walk on water? When we are older you'll understand. It's enough when I say so, and maybe some things are that simple when you walk away. You don't hear me say please oh baby, don't go. Simple and clean is the way that you're making me feel tonight. It's hard to let it go. Hold me. Whatever lies beyond this morning is a little later on. Regardless of warnings, the future doesn't scare me at all. Nothing's like before. When you walk away you don't hear me say please oh baby, don't go. Simple and clean is the way that you're making me feel tonight. it's hard to let it go. Hold me. Whatever lies beyond this morning is a little later on. Regardless of warnings, the future doesn't scare me at all. Nothing's like before. Hold me. Whatever lies beyond this morning is a little later on. Regardless of warnings, the future doesn't scare me at all. Nothing's like before. Once Naruto finishes, he notices a deafening silence from his audience. He sees everyone's eyes are wide as dinner plates and their jaws were on the floor. Even Wendy and her dark half were just as shocked as the rest. Needless to say, the entire audience was shocked. They did not think that anyone with some decent talent would appear tonight. But Naruto's single song just blew the competition. Every single person in that bar was completely entranced by his singing. Hell, even the workers and managers of the bar stopped what they were doing just to listen to Naruto's singing. There was just something about it that got their attention and kept them enthralled throughout the entire time. The silence was soon replaced with loud cheering and clapping. The cheering got so loud that everyone outside could hear, and people wondered what got everyone so cheerful. Naruto just stares at everyone in surprise. It was so weird to have people cheer for him, for anything at all. He was so used to people screaming away from him in terror, that he had forgotten what it was like to have people cheer for him in joy. Before they could ask for an encore, he gets down the stage and quickly leaves with Wendy. Once he left, he noticed Wendy kept looking at him with stars in her eyes. Naruto sweat dropped, waiting when Wendy will finally say something. Finally, after a while of staring, Wendy asked the question that was on her mind. Why didn't you tell me you sing? Naruto just chuckled before ruffling her hair. You knew I could sing, Wendy. Remember the lullabies I used to sing to get you to sleep? He teased. Wendy just playfully glares at him. Lullabies don't count. Anyone can sing them, so how did you learn? Why did you learn to sing? Why didn't tell me? Naruto looked amused at the questions. To answer your questions, you never asked me if I could sing. I like to sing because Hinata used to do it as her hobby, and she also used to sing a lot for me when we were together. So I decided to learn to honor her. Plus it kept me from getting bored for a few years along with other activities. Wendy just tilted her head in confusion. Other activities? Naruto just rolled his eyes. Come on Wendy, you think all I did for 400 years is just destroy or go in hiding? I do have hobbies besides torturing humans, killing, and destroying the shit all around me. Could have fooled me, mocked Wendy. So very true, Dark muttered. Ha, 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 he mocked back. The two found a cozy spot on the beach with some milkshakes. Wendy devours the cinnamon buns her dad bought her while waiting for the fireworks. She didn't have to wait long as the show began that lit up the entire sky for miles. Wendy smiles and leans on her dad. Naruto notices and wraps his arm around her to bring her closer. Best day in a long time, both of them thought. A few hours later, Naruto appears in Wendy's room in the resort with said girl in his arms. It was a long and exciting day for the two dragons. He places her on her bed and was about to leave when he feels a tug to see Wendy looking at him with half-lidded eyes. Can you please stay with me, tonight? She pleads. Naruto sighs, but smiles nonetheless. Naruto changes into more comfortable clothing before setting a futon next to Wendy's. Soon both fall into a blissful sleep. It was the best sleep either had in a long time. The next day, the two were standing in the area where Wendy last saw her friends. The two were going over some last-minute things before Naruto left. Alright, Wendy, remember what I told you for the games? Naruto asks. Be wary of Raven Tail if they appear, watch out for Sabertooth and their Dragonslayers, Lamia Scale with their own Sky Slayer, and Mermaid Heel with my aunt and mom. Good. Naruto nodded in approval. Are you sure I can't convince you to join my team? She asked, hoping her dad would change his mind. Having him on the team would definitely ensure her guild's win. Unfortunately, Naruto shook his head. Sorry my dear, I think that would be a little unfair for the rest of the teams if I participate. Wendy's eyes narrowed in suspicion. You're not planning to participate with your own team, are you? Naruto rolled his eyes in amusement. No my dear, as entertaining as that idea would be, I will stay clear of participating in the games. I will only appear if I have to. You have my world, plus I think your guild will exploit an interesting rule in this year's games. Naruto said as he shows Wendy a page from the GMC rule book. Her eyes widen in surprise before giving her dad a cheeky grin. Now you have all your equipment and weapons stored in your seals. She nodded. Naruto then smiled. Good, now for some last-minute gifts. Naruto opens his storage dimension and takes out 2 books. Come out. Wendy recognized the 2 instantly. Mom's album and her journal? Are you sure? She asked, knowing how much her father valued anything from her late birth mother. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I feel it would be better if they were with you. Plus I hope it helps you feel closer to her. Wendy nodded in appreciation before storing the books away. Naruto then gave her 2 other notebooks with notes on how to continue her training regimen to master her Dragonslayer abilities without him. One last gift for my cute, little dragon princess. Wendy blushed before glaring at him in annoyance for yet another nickname he's gonna call her by. She sees her father bites into his wrists and was about to ask what he was doing before he brought his hands close together. A crystal orb began to form with the blood going in the orb along with a large amount of wind magic. The process continued for a few seconds before a sphere the size of a beach ball was in his hands. It was dark blue in color and had a glowing white hue in the center. The glow was in the shape of a dragon. Wendy looked in shock, having a very good idea what this was. Is that AAA? Naruto nodded. Yes, a wind dragon Lacrima. With this, you will also be a 3rd-generation dragon slayer. Wendy looked at him in shock. He was gonna give her a dragon Lacrima just like that? Are you sure? Naruto nodded again. Yes, you have earned the title of Dragonslayer in my eyes, Wendy. So you are worthy of such a gift. Wendy nodded. I am ready, Daddy. Naruto pushes into Wendy. Wendy checks herself. That wasn't too bad. Naruto just chuckles before telling her it was time for him to go. Wendy gave her father a tight hug, which he gratefully returned. I will be watching the games, while I am doing an important project for the dragons. We will see each other again, Wendy. I promise to show up on July 7th. I will fulfill my promise and tell you and the other Dragonslayers what happened to your dragons. You have my word, Wendy nodded. Before then be weary of the games. There is something else going on with the royal family. Something possibly to do with Zeref. Demons and other monsters have been appearing more frequently throughout Fury. Be on guard at all times when you feel something wrong. Bad stuff will happen on July 7th and I need you to be ready. You and the other humans won't survive the cataclysm that is to come alone. I will be there to make sure you will see the next sunlight. Do you understand, Wendy? She nodded and let go. Naruto bent down and gave a kiss on the forehead. Good luck to you, your sisters, and your guild. Fairy tale can prevail, I know it. Wendy looked up with a fire in her eyes. We will win, she cheers confidently. Naruto smiles. See you soon, my chibi-hime, he said as he opened a portal and went through it. Bye, Daddy. Say hi to Jira-chan for me, she shouts one last time as her father disappears. Wendy stood there for a few minutes before turning her head when she hears footsteps approaching her. She sees Jet and Droy jogging toward her. She sweat drops when she feels no change in their magical power. A bright flash blinds the 3 of them. Suddenly Team Natsu with Juvia and Levi appear. All of them have blank stares on their faces. Wendy's sweat drop got even bigger. Oh, the boy looks like they just found out about the celestial spirit world's time difference. This won't end well at all. Hey, guys, where have you been? Droy asks. Yeah, the games start in 5 days. Jet shouts. Oh, my god. Natsu, Gray, Erza, Happy, and Charla all shout as they all fall forward on the sand. Julia and Levi were hugging each other, crying a waterfall of tears. Lucy was on her knees and shaking her fist up into the air. Mustache Teme, give us back our time. She comically screamed into the sky. Wendy just chuckled. Yup, everything was back to normal for her. Chapter 10. A lucky break appears and a romantic evening. It was the middle of the afternoon and Team Natsu, Levi, Juvia, Happy, and Charla were all glooming in sadness. Reason being, all of their time for training time had been taken away in a flash. Now only 5 days remain before the games begin. There was no way they could train in 5 days to compensate for the 3 months lost. Now they were all sulking, wondering how they could fail so miserably. For the last few hours, Wendy has been trying her best to cheer them up. Come on guys, cheer up. I am sure we can think of something, she shouted hopefully to cheer up her depressed friends. However, her cheering seems to get their moods even worse with all of her friends having blank faces. How could this have happened? Erza asked. Our precious training time. Natsu started. 3 months. Just like that. Gray continued. What are we gonna do? Lucky asked out loud. Levi sighed dejectedly. I guess we'll have to cancel entering the games this year, she said. While Juvia sighed sadly. Sniff, now the gap between me and Lily has grown even more. Charla just looked confused at Happy's remark. You care about something like that, she retorted. Wendy just grew a sweat drop at how depressed her teammates are. Her sweat drop got bigger when she heard that Jet and Droy say their magical power has not increased at all. 3 months and nothing has changed. Hell, Droy didn't even lose any weight. I think these 7 years have been the worst for these two. She then looks to see her teammates still depressed and sighs. There has got to be a way to get out of their funk. Before Wendy could contemplate further, Erza rose from the sand with a fire in her eyes. We can still make it if we start right now. I propose a 5-day training from hell. Get ready maggots, because you won't have a chance to sleep at all. Lucy, Levi, Juvia, Natsu, and Gray all cowered together in fear. We are gonna die, they all cried fearfully. Wendy's sweat drop just got even bigger. No training that Erza can come up with will ever surpass what I went through with 2chan. She thought with a shiver. Sheesh, that was a nightmare. She thought before deciding to intervene on behalf of the others. Erza, she called, getting the Scarlet Mage's attention. While I appreciate a good training camp as much as the next person, we can't cram 3 months of training into 5 days. Not unless you have a way to open a portal to hell or another dimension with time differences, she said while keeping the last part to herself. Everyone looked at Wendy strangely. Wendy began to fidget under their gazes. What? She finally asked. Natsu pointed a finger at her. Why you don't have a problem with Erza's TTT training camp? He stuttered out. Everyone stood shocked when she shook her head. Not really. I wouldn't mind having a spar with all of you, but that would never compensate for the time everyone has had. Plus it would be a great chance to test myself against everyone. She finished off with a smirk. Everyone looked at Wendy as if she grew a second head. None more so than Erza. She would never admit this to anyone, but she knew she can be rather harsh with her training regiments. But she feels like that's the only way to get her team to catch up to her skill level. Plus, she feels like that's the best way to bond with her friends. So she had odd ways of showing her affections. Sue her. However, she then focused on something Wendy said. She peered into her magical reserves and her eyes widened at what she felt. What the hell? Her magical reserves are off the charts? If I have to guess, they rival both Gajeel and Natsu, and those two have some of the largest reserves in the entire guild just below myself, Laxus, Guildarts, and the Master. Erza's eyes narrowed in suspicion. There's no way she could have gotten this strong on her own. Someone must have trained her, but the question is who? Before they could question Wendy any further, a pigeon came flying down and landed on Erza's head. Everyone looked dumbfounded until they noticed a note on the pigeon's leg. Erza slowly took the note from the pigeon and it soon flew away without missing a beat. Erza opens the note and reads as everyone huddles around her to also read the note. Fairy tale, come to the suspension deep within the west woods of the beach resort, an old friend. Wendy narrows her eyes. This was way too suspicious. For all they know, this could be a trap. We should probably handle this with some caution. Agreed, spoke Dark. She was about to tell the same with her friends, but face faltered when she saw everyone walking to the destination. She could hear a smack inside of her friend, which was Dark facepalming at the stupidity of Wendy's friends. Thank the dragons 2chan is not here, or else he would have bashed them over the heads for their naivety. She thought in exasperation, with Dark agreeing before following her nakama to the meeting spot. A few minutes later in the forest, the group arrived at the meeting spot, only to find the bridge in ruins. What the hell? Natsu yelled. This was a bad idea. Wendy is exasperated. Was this a prank? Gray asked. What should we do? Erza muttered quickly. Suddenly the group is shocked when time seems to flow in reverse as the bridge rebuilt itself. The bridge rebuilt itself? Several shouts from the group. Hold on, this magic. Natsu muttered. It feels familiar. Gray finished. This is Arc of Time magic. Wendy shouted mentally, remembering her father telling her about it. The group slowly goes over the bridge with some apprehension. The group then goes to a small clearing in the woods and sees 3 cloak figures. Natsu slammed his fists together. Alright, who the hell are you guys? If it's a fight you want, it's a fight you'll get. The figure in the middle began to speak as the 3 began to remove their hoods. Thank you for coming. It's been 7 years, fairy tale. The middle figure finished as his hood was removed, revealing Jelal Ferdenins. Merity and Ultir Milkovich. Everyone looked at the 3 in shock. JJ Jelal. Erza stuttered, said the man smiling at the Scarlet Mage. You haven't changed a bit, Erza. I guess you heard about my prison break, right? He asks in the end. Erza nodded slowly. She knew all right. It was a few weeks, no months ago, she corrected herself. Biska and Alzak told her about it. Gray also nodded, remembering when Leon visited him and told him about Ultir and Merity doing the jailbreak. To be honest, I had no intention of breaking out, but Ultir and Merity had other plans. Ultir nodded. You should have seen him. He was rather stubborn about it, but Merity and I managed to get him to agree. Merity shook her head. I didn't do much. Ultir did all the work. Merity? Juvia shouted in shock. Merity got a big smile on her face before waving at the water mage. Hello Juvia-chan, it's been a while. Juvia had a small smile on her face. After everything that's happened to her, she could such a wonderful smile. I'm glad for you, Merity. Juvia thought in the joy that her former enemy, now friend, seemed to be happy now. Hold on, weren't those 2 members of Grimoire Heart? Lucy exclaimed fearfully. Natsu and Gray got tense. Does that make them our enemies? Natsu asked. Stay on guard, Gray said. Wendy and Erza got tense, but that was deflated by Ultir's giggles. Enemies. We were enemies. But we are not friends, sadly. Merely acquaintances making some small talk. She said with a sad smile. Everyone listens to her intently. The sins we have all committed can't be wiped away so easily. So we have pledged ourselves to save as many lives as we can. That is our way of atoning for our sins. Jelal was the first person I saved because he was one of the many that suffered because of my actions. Erza then spoke up. Jelal, said the man, looked at her. Your memories, have they returned? She asked, feeling very tense at what the response will be. Jelal nodded. Yeah, all of my memories have returned. Erza stood there shocked. It happened about 6 years ago. For the first year of my sentence, the constant beatings caused my memory to slowly return up my jailbreak. He looked up at Erza, his eyes glassy and filled with regret and shame. Erza, I really don't know what to say. After everything I did, the fact that you worry about me is a miracle in itself. I was planning to stone for my sins with my execution, but Ultir and Merity gave me this alternative. Wendy then looked at Jelal in wonder. Does that mean you finally found a reason to live? Jelal nodded. I found several reasons to live now. By the way, Wendy, I am not the Jelal that saved you. Wendy shook her head before she said she found out already. The three of us found a common goal with one another. We created a guild, an independent guild, one that is not a dark guild, but not associated with the council either. We call ourselves, Crime Sorciere. Jelal said, shocking everyone. Crime Sorciere? Who hasn't heard of you guys? Droy exclaimed. Your guild has been known for destroying several guilds and demons all around the country. Jet added with Wendy nodded in agreement with what was said since she heard all this before. It really helps to have a dad that keeps up with the current events of the last 7 years. All three nodded. That's correct, Ultir said. We have one objective, to destroy all dark guilds, evil demons, and anything related to Zeref. Evil demons? Everyone asked in unison. Yeah, over the last 7 years, there has been an increase of demons attacking several human civilizations and everyone that lives within it. No one can explain what caused this change, but it's causing a lot of tension in some areas of Fury. Many think it has to do with Acnologia's reappearance. Others think it's a sign that Zeref is rising again. Regardless, these demons have become a threat to everyone around the country and in several parts of the world. There have even been rumors of kaiju appearing in some areas of Earthland. Jelal said in a grim tone. Kaiju? Levi, Juvia, Jet, Droy, Erza, and Lucy screamed in shock. Natsu and Gray looked confused, while Wendy looked deep in thought. Guys, what are kaiju? Natsu asked. Everyone looked like he grew a second head. Natsu, kaiju are gigantic demon-like creatures that have been around for millions of years. They even predate almost all sentient life on Earthland, possibly even the dragons. These beings are considered to have legendary status, and many are said to rival and surpass even a dragon's power. Some have even been worshipped as gods. Everyone turned to look at the one who explained in surprise. Wendy scratches the back of her head in embarrassment from all the staring. She was still not used to being the center of attention. And you're doing a great job avoiding it, Dark sarcastically remarked. Wendy knew she was screwed up with the suspicious looks that many of her friends were giving her. Before they could voice it, Jelal spoke again. That's correct. Lately, more and more sightings of creatures that match kaiju have been appearing all around the world, especially some in Fury, yet no one can understand why this has only begun in the last 7 years. Do you think it has something to do with Acnologia? Natsu quickly. He wanted to know if that bastard lizard had something to do with this. However, his hopes dropped when all three shrugged. Honestly, no one is sure. Ever since his attack on Tenro, he's disappeared once again. No one has seen him again since that day 7 years ago. Everyone from Fairy Tail, minus Wendy, clenched being reminded of that day. Jelal sighed knowing how frustrating it has to be for them, but they needed to get back on track. Our objective is to hopefully destroy all dark guilds and all remnants of Zeref and hopefully stop the creation of dark guilds from ever occurring again. Really? Natsu sounded excited. That sounds amazing, an impressed Lucy said. Gray looked confused. But wait, if your intentions are righteous, why not become an official guild? He asked. Said members looked a bit sheepish. Because I am a fugitive. Jelal with a teasing smile, plus Ultir and I are former members of a dark guild. Merely said sheepishly. The reason we called you was not just to catch on to what's been going on. Ultir spoke up. We heard you were planning to enter the Grand Magic Games, right? Everyone's sweat dropped. Why yeah, if they notice it, none of the 3 mages called them out on it. Well, we would like you to do us a favor. We want you to be our eyes and ears during the game. Everyone titled their heads. Why do you need us to be your eyes and ears? Levy asked, but Wendy had a sneaking suspicion of what they were about to ask of them. Her fears were confirmed by Jelal. During the years of the GMC, there has been malevolent magical force accumulating around the capital city. This accumulation has always occurred during the GMC only, and not during any other time of the year. Wendy narrowed her. It was just like her father warned her. There were dark forces in the games, and her father told her that it has some link to the royal, but without any proof, she can't barge right at them with any accusations. Malevolent magical force? Natsu asked in slight concern. But the GMC has a collection of guilds from all over Fury, right? Lucy questioned, so there's bound to be one or two magical forces. Lucy finished. Jelal and the others nodded in agreement. You're right, and I would be inclined to agree with you, but suspicious magical forces have signatures similar to Zeref. It could be him, one of his followers, or something just as evil. We have been able to tell. Zeref, Natsu growled with gritted teeth. He remembered meeting that bastard and how he nearly killed Evergreen and Elfman. The bastard even had the nerve to act as if they know each other. But the more he thought about it, the more it feels like Zeref does seem familiar to Natsu. It was the same feeling he had with Wendy and Gajeel. But no matter how hard he tried, nothing came. Wendy was in her thoughts as well. Everything her father warned her about was coming to pass. She wanted to say Raven Tail or the Royal was the cause of the malevolent force, but she knew Crime Sorciere would have mentioned them if they had been suspicious of them, meaning they were not the culprit, and without any proof, they can't accuse them of anything. We want you guys to confirm whether or not the magical source has any connection to Zeref. Altair explained. From there we may be able to find a link that may lead us to Zeref, and hopefully stop him once and for all. Jelal finished. Of course, whether you win or not is a completely different matter. We're hoping that you guys win, and we'll be rooting for you all from the shadows. Meredy said with a smile. It sounds like a wild goose chase, but we'll still help you, Erza said with Wendy and company nodding in agreement. Altair smiled. We appreciate it. As for compensation for assisting us, I would like to give you something. Food, rent money, weapons, books? Altair sweat dropped at the different answers she got. She shook her head saying they were all wrong. She held her crystal ball to them. With my new and improved Arc of Time magic, I can increase your magical ability. Eh? Everyone said, except Wendy, who had a good idea of what she was talking about. You see, everyone has a container inside their bodies that determines the absolute limits of their magical powers. When it becomes empty, we are unable to perform magic anymore until it's refilled again. This happens when our bodies convert the raw eternano we absorb from the atmosphere into magical power to refuel our container. Everyone nodded in understanding the explanation. However, research in the last few years has shown us that there is a part of the containers that are not normally used. A dormant power that sleeps within every mage. It has been given the name, Second Origin. I was right, Wendy thought. I'm gonna enjoy how you plan to get out of this. Dark replied. Hush you, Wendy said. My magic has the power to evolve your containers to incorporate those dormant portions. In other words, by giving you the power to Second Origin, I can give you all a boost to your magical powers. Yes, no thanks. Everyone screamed in Joe. Wait. What? Everyone turns to Wendy with shocked expressions. Wendy scratched the back of her head in embarrassment. She may be able to talk more freely, but she still got meek when she had so much attention towards her. Dark smacked her head again for Wendy's blunt way of replying to Altair's offer. Her dad was really rubbing off on them. Wendy, what? Her team screamed. He. I said no thanks. Why do I appreciate the gift? I don't need it. She said. Everyone looked like she lost her mind. Why would Wendy deny such an offer? Wendy, why would reject this? This could really help us. Lucy said, trying to figure out why the youngest member of their team was acting so strangely. Wendy shook her head. The reason is that I don't have a Second Origin available to me. At least not the way you think. Wendy replied, but kept the last bit to herself. WWWWHHHHHHAAAAAATTTT? Everyone screamed. Wendy had to slightly cover her ears from all the screaming. You must be wondering why I can't achieve Second Origin, correct? They all nodded. Well, the truth is that I have an odd medical condition that I was not aware of. This condition became apparent to me by my sensei who trained me for the GMC. Now that rose some eyebrows. Does someone actually train Wendy? He said due to some complications during my birth, my Second Origin became lost to me, Wendy explained to her friends, even if the entire thing was a complete lie. Although it was better to lie than tell them the actual truth for now. Yeah, sorry about absorbing your Second Origin. Dark muttered, but Wendy mentally said she was not at fault. That was an interesting thing that her father discovered during their training trip. Naruto had every intention of unlocking the second origin for Wendy but discovered like Ultier, she had none. They were all perplexed until he realized what happened. When Kurama's chakra began the merging process, it took more than her dragon half and dark side. It took her second origin with it. So technically she still has it, but until she fully merges with Dark Wendy, all that power would not available to her. But she was fine with that, since having all of her father's training and the second origin would make her a bit op and throw off the team dynamics. She was the support with offensive capabilities. But if she began being front fighting all the time, there would be no one to assist the others when they truly needed it. Wendy shook herself from her thoughts when she heard Erza call her name. Sorry Erza, can you repeat the question? She asked. Wendy, who was the one who trained you? Erza asked. She was curious about who was able to make Wendy so strong and knew about her condition. Wendy beamed a huge smile. My two-chan trained me. This is becoming a theme with them when it involves us. Dark deadpan. Hi, Wendy replied back. You're what? Everyone screamed, especially Carla. My dad came after you guys disappeared. We had a long talk and at the end, he offered to train me for the GMC, which I took. Now everyone stared at her dumbfounded, especially the fairy tale members. Wendy's estranged father, the same father that Wendy claimed to be more powerful than any one of them, actually came back to Wendy and offered to train her. Carla looked aggravated at this. She did not like that Wendy was hanging out with a suspicious stranger. Regardless of their blood relation. However, before she could verbally voice her displeasure, she felt Wendy give her a glare that screamed, drop it. Carla growled mentally at this. It has always been like since they were in Kate's shelter. Every time she spoke negatively about her father, she would voice her displeasures to her. However, her time in Fairy Tail has given her more confidence in herself, and it seems being with her father has increased it even more if she is willingly able to glare at her now. Wendy, how was the training with your dad? Levi asked. Everyone got a bit apprehensive when Wendy shivered from the question. Wendy gulped before answering, well, I can tell you it was literal hell, but it was beneficial. Honestly, it makes anything Erza could do look like a summer camp. Everyone from Fairy Tail paled from that. Her father couldn't be that crazy, right? If only they knew. What's he like? Erza asked. She was curious about this individual. She wanted to know more about him. Wendy hummed, well, I can that my dad is. Everyone closed in anticipation. Complicated. Cue face faults from everyone. Wendy chuckled at her friend's reaction. Sorry guys, but my dad kinda asked not to delve too much about him. He's a rather secretive person. Natsu then asked something. Well, what can you tell us? Can you tell us what he taught you? Wendy hummed again. Well, I don't want to spoil the surprises, but I can give you a few hints. Everyone listened intently. He helped me complete my Dragonslayer training. Since I never finished my training with Grandini, he rectified it. He also taught me some spells with my wind affinity and taught some things about seals, and some other fallbacks if I couldn't use magic. Finally, he taught me how to be a shinobi. Everyone tilted their heads in confusion. Shinobi? Wendy just giggled and just said that would be a surprise. Did you just train for 3 months with your father? Lucy. She was very curious about what Wendy did with the father she had not seen in a year, no 8 years. Wendy shook her head. No. Besides training, we just talked. I told you about my life. My adventures with Fairy Tail, and all the friends I made. He was really happy that I was so far having a good told me everything about himself. What he was like, what he has been doing, where he was all this time. I learned everything about him. He can be rather quiet and cryptic, but he does worry about me and those close to him. It's just he has a hard time showing it sometimes cause it's been such a long time since he showed his softer side. But I managed to see it a lot. He even took me to the carnival and it was the best day I could ever ask of him. Everyone smiled at that, except Carla. Good for Wendy. She deserved to have quality time with her father, and they were glad that her dad went to great lengths for her. Though Lucy and Erza felt a slight tinge of jealousy. Lucy never had a good relationship with her father, and even when things were looking up, she disappeared for 7 years and he passed away during that time. Although she was glad he did love her, she'd have loved to hear it from his mouth. Erza was in a similar. She never knew either of her parents and wondered if either of them loved her unconditionally as her family did in Fairy Tail. On some days, she would look up into the stars and always wonder what could have been. In 2 distinct locations and far-off locations, a blonde-haired man and a very beautiful red-head sneezed. Ultier said that while this gossip was fun, they should get back at everyone getting the second origin. Ah! Natsu shouted as he withered on the ground in pain. Everyone, minus Merity and Wendy, looked on in shock. Was it supposed to be this painful? Lucy asked in fright and worry for Natsu. Ultier giggled at the question. Come now, you didn't think unlocking one's potential would be so simple? It was gonna be one hell of a journey. Wendy nodded. You can say that again. Shivering from the phantom pain. Sheesh, her dad knew how to dish out pain. I feel sick looking at this, Lucy said. How bad is the pain? Gray asked. You really should not ask that, Wendy said. Want to have a sensory link? Meredy suggested. Hell no, Meredy just giggled. Wendy sweat dropped. Ah, Meredy, you even gain a sense of humor. Even if it's a little sadistic. Juvia Thagut. I'm gonna cry, Levy said. Let's get the hell out of here. Droy. Jet. Wendy just sweat dropped at the two, before she noticed two others were missing. Where are Erza and Jelal? She asked. Altair hummed in thought. I think the two went somewhere to talk in private, she replied. Juvia perked up at this before getting an idea in her head. Let's go somewhere in private too, Gray-sama, she said as she grabbed his arm and dragged him away. Gray looked a bit worried, but he couldn't hide the small blush on his face. Meredy smiled. At least those two are making progress. Erza and Jella were on a sandy beach with Jelal on top of her. How the hell did this happen? Well, the two decided to talk in private. The main topic is Simon and Jalal's idea about redemption and whether or not he deserved to have it. Erza did not like the bullshit he was spewing, and that ended with the two of them rolling down the small cliff. Jalal's eyes softened. You always were right, he finally said. Erza shook her head. No, I'm not. I always tried to stay alive, no matter how clumsy I was. Erza, Jelal. The two inched closer and closer until their lips met. It sent a jolt of pleasure between the two. Erza moaned as she deepened the kiss, with Jella returning it with vigor. A passion awoke between the two. A passion that had been waiting to wake up for several years, and now that passion has awakened. Needless to say, it was a night neither could forget. Later that night, everyone was in their rooms, moaning in agony from the phantom pains of unlocking their potential. Erza, Wendy, and the others were outside. You made all unable to move for the rest of the day. Damn lightweights, Erza said fondly. Everyone just sweat drop, with Wendy giggling awkwardly. Hell, how are you still moving? Meredy asked, completely baffled that the crimson-haired mage was walking as if nothing happened. Wouldn't be surprised if the second origin was opened from the beginning. Jelal and Wendy thought with dark humming in agreement. Regarding the tournament, I'll try and be in the shadows to root for guys, Jelal said. I really want to watch the tournament. Meredy pouted. In disguise? Altair teased. Never mind, she replied with everyone else giggling, chuckling. Erza and Wendy waved them goodbye. This isn't so bad as our answer. She thought. Nay, Erza, Happy called out. Erza then looked to see Happy drawing something. She looked to see a heart with a single word in the center. Jerza. When is the wedding and when can we expect kids? He teased. The next thing Happy knew, he was sailing in the air straight to the moon. Erza looked to see Wendy blushing a very bright shade of red. Damn, we need to step up our game, or our sister is gonna beat us. Dark remarked, but was ignored by Wendy. Wendy then got a mischievous idea in her head. She looked up and gave Erza a cheeky grin, a grin Erza did not like since it reminded her too much of Mirajane. Why Erza, I did not know you wanted to get married so badly. Can I be one of the bridesmaids or maybe even the flower girl? Erza blushed a shade of red even deeper than her hair. I am not desperate to get married, she screamed to the heavens. Chapter 11 Night before the games and meetings. Crocus, the beautiful capital city of Fiori, was truly a beautiful sight to behold. It was by far the largest in the entirety of Fiori. The sheer size is something that few will ever forget. The city itself was built on the foundation of a valley with several mountains surrounding the town, giving the place a very distinct look from the other cities of Fiori. In the center of the city is the palace of the king of Fiori, known as Mercurius. Crocus is known for two huge attractions that bring people year-round to the capital. The first is the beautiful flowers that adorn every street and the numerous gardens located around the city. Crocus has such a wonderful reputation for its flowers and gardens that it has been given the name of the flower-blooming capital. The second great attraction is to the west of the city. The huge stadium is known as the Domus Flau. It's here that the GMC is hosted every year to determine which guild is the #1 guild in Fiori. As we take a closer look at the city, we find the members of Team Natsu having finally arrived in the capital to achieve victory in their guild. Well, that would the case if half of the team was on the ground dead tired. I really don't feel confident about all this. We'll not even be sure if Altair's spell worked right. Gray remarked. I do feel that my magic did increase, but my entire body still feels sore. Lucy retorted. The only two members not on the ground were Wendy and Erza. Wendy sweat dropped and Erza shook her head in disappointment. Honestly, have any shame? She asked. Lucy and Gray just sweat dropped in response to that. How are you fine, Erza? Lucy asked. I bet she had the second origin from the start, Gray said. That would make so much sense, Lucy responded. Wendy giggled before looking around at the vast palace around her. The capital really was huge compared to Magnolia. This place is so big, even for a city, Wendy commented. Happy nodded. It's a lot bigger than the Edalus Kingdom, Carla said. You guys finally made it. Someone shouted. Everyone turned to see Master Makarov with Asuka on his shoulders along with Jet, Droy, Levi, Biska, and Alan. Let's get on with this event already. Ha. We'll show them the power of fairy tale. However, some of the passers-by heard the statement, and couldn't help but laugh. Did you hear that? Fairy tale? Where? Them? They actually plan to participate again? That weak guild that forever claims last place? PFT ha 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 ha. Natsu glared at the laughing folks. What was that? He growled. Wendy also glared at the people laughing at the fairy tale members. If there was one thing a Dragonslayer hated, it's being mocked. Ah ha ha, you should just pack it in and go home. Yeah. Pack your bags and get out of here, you trouble-making losers. Grr. Why those bastards? Natsu growled as the air around him began to heat up. Wendy was also growling in silent anger as her eyes flashed red with slits. However, both stopped their train of thought when they felt a hand on their shoulder. They turned to see a stern Erza looking at them. Calm down, both of you. I understand that both of you are frustrated by their comments, but don't let them get to you. Both Dragonslayers sighed as they got their anger in check. Makarov then spoke up. Erza's right. Let them comment and insult us all they want, but once we take the crown, no one will be putting us down. Right, Team Fairy Tale? Natsu, Gray, Erza, Wendy, and Lucy all smirked in confirmation. How were these five chosen to be Fairy Tale's team? Well, flashback, Magnolia Town, Fairy Tale Guild. WWWWHHHHHHAAAATTTT? Was the collective shout of Team Natsu. What do you mean no one has returned to the guild? Natsu shouted. Makarov sighed. It's as I said, Natsu. Laxus, Gildarts, Mirajane, and everyone else that went on a training trip have not returned, so I will have to make do with the five of you. He looked at the five mages, gauging their reactions. Natsu and Gray looked really revved up. Erza looked slightly concerned, but even she was anxious about the games. Lucy was understandably very worried. While she was not the weakest mage in the guild, she could hardly equal the raw power of the others. But, she has been through a lot during her time in Fairy Tale, and he believed she could handle it. However, he was slightly surprised by Wendy's reaction. She did not look scared or anxious. She looked giddy to be participating in the games. It seems Naruto gave her a huge boost in confidence. Now the question is, what did he teach her, and would it be enough for the games? He contemplated. He guessed he will see the results during the actual games. Meanwhile, Wendy was shivering in excitement. She was worried that she may not be chosen, because of her young stature, but now she was given a chance to everyone what she's made of. Hell yeah. And this will be a perfect opportunity to get our boy toy to falling even more in love with us. I can already see the steamy fun we can have in the very near future. Dark exclaimed perversely. Luckily, Wendy was able to hide the blush that was appearing on her face. Shush you, save that pillow talk when we cross that bridge. Oh, don't worry, I will. And when we do, all bets are off, ha 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 ha. Laughed Dark. Wendy just sighed. Dealing with a perverted subconscious can have its toll on a little girl's mind. Thankfully no permanent damage has been done yet. At least she hoped so. She looked and saw Lucy was very nervous about participating in the games. She needed to get out of that funk, or else it may affect how she does in the games. Lucy, Wendy called to get the blonde's attention. The celestial mage turned to the young Dragonslayer, who gave a comforting smile. Don't worry too much, Lucy. Both of us have been through a lot since we joined Fairy Tale, right? Lucy nodded. All of the enemies we faced were miles beyond us, and yet we survived and won. If we've gotten this far, we can get through these games as well. Just believe in yourself and your spirits. Lucy looked shocked that Wendy of all people was giving her the pep talk, not that she wasn't grateful. It's just odd since it's usually the others that gave the pep talk. Her dad must have done one hell of a job to get her like this. Thinking about what she said, she realized she was right. Ever since she joined Fairy Tale, she has been so much and nearly died so many against so many enemies. Aragorn, Phantom Lord, the Tower of Heaven, the Thunder Legion, Tribe, the Robotic Dragonic, the Edal's incident, and the disaster that was Tenro Island. She went through hell in all of that and still managed to stay alive and help her friends survive. If they could get through all that, why would this be any different? Lucy smiled gratefully at Wendy. Thank you, Wendy. That means a lot. Before giving her a hug, the Sky Maiden happily returned. Everyone smiled at the adorable scene. Alright, leave the mushy stuff until after the games. Then we can celebrate with all the hugs we want. Natsu said. Everyone laughed before everyone heard the master say, although it would have been better to have Gildarts, Laxus, and Mirajane. With them, victory would have been assured. Hey, we heard that. Natsu and Gray shouted, while the three girls' sweat dropped. Flashback and, anyway, after managing to get on their feet, the other members began to explain what the games have been like for the last 7 years. The GMC is always a different competition every year, Alzak said. It was sharpshooting the year I didn't participate, Biska said. It was a race the year after that, Jet said. The games always change each year, Levi explained. I've read the rulebook a few times, and there are 3 rules that always remain consistent. Team Fairy Tail listened intently to the rules. Firstly, the guild master can't participate in the games. Ah well, Makarov replied. Secondly, only mages with the guild's insignia are allowed to participate. That seems to be an expected rule for anyone to follow, Gray said. Also, the events for each day will remain secret until the day of the games. Everyone nodded at the rules. All of them seem very simple to follow. Wendy noticed that Levy had not mentioned the special rule for the games this year. She or the master probably wants to keep it hidden so it can be a big surprise for everyone. Dark said. Wendy mentally agreed with that assessment, since the master was one for theatrics on occasion. Oh. Levy suddenly spoke, which gained everyone's attention. What is it, Levy-chan? Lucy asked. There is one more thing to mention at the very end. All participants in the games must be at their designated lodgings by midnight tonight. Midnight? They all questioned. It's just like the Cinderella story, Lucy said. We still got plenty of time. Natsu exclaimed before grabbing Lucy and Happy. Natsu, Lucy, and Happy then began running off. We've come all this way to the capital city of Fury, we might as well hit the city and explore it while we have the chance. Natsu screamed happily with Lucy blissfully following and Happy shouting, Aye sir. Everyone also split off with Julia and Gray going one direction, Levy and the other members going another, Wendy and Carla going to explore in another direction, and Erza walking off to the lodge. Lodgings for each team, mumbled to herself. What could be the purpose of all of us being there by midnight? Will there be some type of preliminary round before the games start? Also, that malevolent power, Jelal spoke of appearing each year. What could it be? Erza continued to contemplate all this as she arrived at her team's designated lodgings. She quickly relaxed before sitting down and reviewing the rules again with the wind-reading glasses. 1 hour before midnight, Wendy and Carla were exploring the garden around Castle Mercurius. Wendy was enthralled by the beauty of the variety of flowers around the castle. Even Dark was enjoying the sights. Hey, even a perverted subconscious can enjoy the small things in life. Carla, this place is amazing. I can spend a month exploring the gardens and would never get old. I agree. I wonder what type of person the king and princess are like. She replied. Me too. I wonder if he has a mustache? Wendy asked. Probably. The Exceed replied. Unbeknownst to the two, they were being watched by a small black imp. It chuckled evilly before moving in on its target. Wendy, I think it's time we have a talk now that we are alone, Carla said with a serious tone. Wendy gave her partner a blank stare. Talk about what? She asked, knowing full well what this is about. Carla scowled at Wendy's obvious obliviousness to her. I am talking about your father, Wendy. Spitting the word father like it was venom in her mouth. This caused Wendy to glare at her Exceed with Dark grumbling in her head. Seriously? Is she still on with this crap? I mean, Dad is not a saint, but this blatant disrespect towards him, and it's starting to piss me off. Dark snarled, getting sick and tired of Carla's attitude towards their father. Sigh, I know. I am just as frustrated as you, Dark. She has been like this ever since she first met him, and has gotten even worse when we found out he was my dad. Now she's made it a mission to push his name through the mud. Dark scoffed. Our partner still thinks we are some weak, insecure child that is frightened of her own shadow. She needs to learn we are growing up and needs to accept that, because let me tell you, if she even tries to stop our alone time with our boyfriend and girlfriend, the gloves are coming and I will put her in her place. Dark roared in Wendy's head. Wendy sighed, knowing her dark half is right. Worrying about her well-being is one thing, but blatantly treating her like glass and not helping her stand for herself would only cripple her in the future. Something that could cost her life or one of her nakama. Wendy just sighed again before returning her attention to Carla. Look, Carla, if you have something to say, just say it. Carla seems to get even more annoyed. I want to know exactly what you did with that stranger during the 3 months I was away. Wendy looked annoyed. First off, he has a name, Carla. So you could address him by it. Second, he isn't some stranger, he's my father. Carla was starting to get angry. That man has done nothing to earn the right to be called that. What has he done for you? Visit you on occasion, make some small talk, a few gifts, and then he just leaves. We never hear from him again until he visits again. Isn't that a little suspicious? Wendy rubbed her temples, feeling a headache coming from this conversation. Carla, my father had a very good reason for not being there for me. And considering the alternative, this was his best solution at the time. Carla just scoffed. Good reason? Is that what he told you? Then do tell, what reason could that be? Wendy looked back at her. Yes, he had a good reason. I won't tell you, because I promised him I wouldn't. Carla looked angrier. And do tell, how do you know he wasn't lying? This time Wendy looked angry and she could feel Dark was getting sick of this conversation. Trust me, I know that he wasn't lying since he couldn't. You need to trust me on this. Carla was looking enraged. Trust? Do you expect me to trust you? Ever since we came back, you have been keeping secrets from us. Heal before you never spoke of your father. But now? You spend 3 months with him and you can't shut up about it. How do we know he's not brainwashing you right to get info on Fairy Tail? Wendy had to sweat dropped at that ridiculous claim. Besides the fact that my dad knows every secret of Fairy Tail already since he practically raised the person who founded the guild, we have nothing to offer him. Before she could retort, she felt a drain on her magical power. Before she knew it, she was on her hands and knees panting heavily. She looked over to see Carla in the same situation, although her condition seemed worse due to her smaller reserves. Wendy, what's happening to us? Carla stammered out. Wendy struggled to get the words out. Our magical power is being drained. Alright, who the fuck is screwing with us? Dark roared in anger. Wendy was also getting angry and quickly tried to pinpoint the assailant and was shocked to feel 5 magic signatures. Wendy glared in the direction that the sources were hiding. I know you're out there. So reveal yourselves, you cowardly bastards. Wendy language. And don't antagonize the enemy. Wendy just gave her a look that screamed, are you kidding me? And the look was mirrored by Dark. Before she could retort, she heard some chuckling before 5 shadows appeared in front of her. 4 were men of average height with cloaks covering their faces. The one in the middle was not concealing his identity and looked very weird. He was quite tall with blue skin and a long nose. He had black beady eyes that were starting impassive at her. The same imp from before was on his shoulder with a sinister grin on its face. Look at what we have here, boys. It's the Dragonslayer girl of Fairy Tail. Look at her, she's just as cute as her pictures portray. One of the cloak men said. What do you men want? Carla screamed. The men all chuckled. Our master wanted to give your guild a message. But you know, it would be a shame to leave her like this. Maybe we can have some fun with her. Looking at Wendy with a lustful look that made her skin crawl. Oh hell no, I refuse to let any of these fucking sickos touch us. That is reserved for our man and girlfriend. Wendy, let me out. Wendy glared hatefully at the sickos in front of her. Her father warned her about such vile men in the world and to be prepared to fight and even kill some of these men. This made Wendy grimace mentally. When she was learning to become a shinobi, her father warned her about what it means to be a ninja. They were agents of the shadows, always hiding in plain sight, and striking when the enemy was at their most vulnerable. Their jobs were not for the faint of heart, because many of their actions will cross lines that many others would not be willing to do. The biggest one is killing. Normally it was illegal for a mage to kill another mage. However, the Magic Council has made a decree that a mage that is S-ranked is allowed to kill. However, there were several protocols that had to be followed. Besides that, killing was only tolerated for non-S-rank mages if the person killed was a wanted mage with a bounty that said the killing was allowed or an actual Dark Guild mage. If these regulations weren't followed, the mage would be persecuted until they were captured, tried, and imprisoned. However, killing was never a simple matter, regardless of the reasons behind it. It was one of the reasons Naruto was so hesitant to teach her about being a shinobi. Because it meant he would have to teach her how to kill. The reason he was hesitant to do this was that he did not want her into a mini-him. One that lived to kill and cause misery to anyone that gets in her way for the sheer thrill and enjoyment of it. The last thing Earthland needed was another Acnologia running around. But Wendy was a stubborn girl, that's for sure. She knew what being a shinobi meant, but she still wanted to learn about being one. Both the good and bad about it. It was tough, but she pulled through and passed her father's expectations. But this was different. This was not training, nor a simulation. This was a real-life situation with her life and purity at stake. She knew there were vile men that do what these men wanted to do on a regular basis. They were the scum of humanity that had no mercy or kindness in their hearts. Nothing would change them, there was no redemption for them. Even if they were captured and sent to prison, it would change nothing. They would just escape and harm someone that won't be as prepared as Wendy was right now. She steeled herself for what she was about to do. Suddenly several magic seals appeared around the 5 goons. From the seal, 5 ethereal light blue knights rose from the seals, each with a sword in hand. All of them were around 10 meters in height. Think the knight constructs from RWBY. Well. Looks like Pops decided to lend a helping hand. Guess he felt something was off from our crystal link. Wendy smirked internally. Time to use the training her father and Dark taught her. Dark, she muttered to her other self. Yeah? She replied back, get ready to give me the boost to tear these bastards limb from limb and to send their master a message. A message of not messing with anyone from Fairy Tail, especially a dragon slayer. Dark smiled evilly. Oh hell yeah, let's show them not to fuck with us. The men were about to get into a brawl with the knights when they all felt a dark presence cover the area of the garden. This caused all of them to freeze at the dark and potent energy they were feeling. It felt even darker than anything their own master could produce at his best. Everyone then felt another pulse of power and felt it coming from the source of this energy. When they turn to the source, they are shocked beyond belief that this power is coming from Wendy of all people. Nobody, including Carla, who was barely conscious, could believe that Wendy could produce such a vile power. You know, she said in a dark tone that made a shiver crawl down everyone's spines. The worst thing you can do is poke a sleeping dragon. Her voice got much more malevolent, scaring her audience even more. When she looks up at them, all of them took a step back at what they looking at. Behind Wendy, a dark and purple aura was forming around her. It was taking the form of some monstrous creature with 9 tails flapping about. The creature's blood-red eyes were glaring down at the puny ninjas. Carla was looking at Wendy in fear before she finally lost consciousness. Even the dark imp trembled in fear, unable to understand what it was seeing. All the imp knew was that it was dangerous and it reminded him too much of his true master. The imp and its blue campion quickly disappeared in a magic circle. The others were about to do the same until they were caught by Wendy and several wind clones. All of them were glaring at them. Oh, you don't get the right to run away after threatening to violate me. Now then let me hear you scream. She roared as she unleashed her onslaught on the bastards. The last thing those men saw was crimson eyes as they screamed into the night. Unknown to the group were 2 that watched the entire scene before disappearing. 30 minutes before midnight, Erza was glaring at her friends that barely made it before midnight. It's almost midnight. Where the hell have you, idiots, been? She exclaimed with authority. Lucy was nervously laughing and said they had been preoccupied with some unexpected events. Natsu and Happy looked extremely angry for some reason. Gray looked completely exhausted. I had to deal with an annoying situation with Juvia, he said. Juvia had dragged him around the capital to see some of the sights. He would admit that he did enjoy spending time with her, even if she can sometimes be really crazy, especially when it involved him and another girl she saw as another love rival. However, when he saw Leon flirt with her, he felt really bothered. He knew why, but he was still too stubborn to admit it. Natsu and Happy seemed to get more pissed off by the question. The reason? Well, during their trip around town, they met with the dragon slayers of Sabertooth, Sting, and Rogue. And as expected, they did not get along at all. The 2 superior dragon slayers claimed they were the 3rd generation, and that even Acnologia would tremble at their power. Natsu retorted that he felt their magical power and compared it to Acnologia. It was nothing but a drop of water in an ocean. It would take Acnologia 1 sneeze to rip them to shreds, and thinking they take that dragon on was a suicide mission. This pissed the 2 off, but then they gave arrogant smirks and claimed that they were true dragon slayers because they killed their dragons. This shocked and appalled Natsu that these 2 boasted proudly that they killed their parents. He decided to walk away and dragged Lucy and Happy away before he did something reckless. Natsu did have some last words for the 2. He said when they face each other, he would show them who the real dragon slayers are. They smirked in acceptance of the challenge. And here he was still pissed off about those smug bastards. Happy was pissed because one of the Exceed with Sting, Lecter, kept insulting him and he wanted to prove that damn cat wrong. Erza just sighed in exasperation at the antics and told them to wait for the tournament to release those frustrations. Then the door to their room opened and in came Lisana and Elfman. Natsu's mood did a complete 180 when he saw the youngest of the takeover trio. Lisana, he exclaimed as he rushed in and wrapped her in a big hug. Lisana just laughed and returned the hug from her best friend and secret crush. Everyone smiled and laughed at the antics of the 2, except Lucy. Lucy for some reason felt off when she saw Natsu hug Lisana so affectionately. She felt a pit develop in her stomach, but decided to ignore it for the time being. The takeover siblings explained they just made it back from their training trip and were pumped for the games. Everyone looked at the clock to see only 15 minutes remain before the games start. Everyone was starting to get worried about Wendy. Where could Wendy be? Erza asked. Could have gotten lost? Natsu asked. Oh no, don't tell me she ended up with the wrong people? Lucy exclaimed, imaging Wendy's scantily clothing with black sunglasses. Gray just sweat dropped. Do all writers have such an overactive imagination? Guys, don't worry so much. I am sure she's just running late, Lisana said. Suddenly the door swung open and everyone turned to see the person they had been waiting for. Hey Wendy, what took so long? The question died in their throat as they saw the condition that Wendy was in. Her hair was a mess with several strands falling in front of her face, her dress was in tatters with several areas with dirt, grim, etc. But the most glaring thing visible was her arms, which were covered in blood with several droplets falling on her feet and dress. She cradled Carla in her arms, who was unconscious and did not seem to be stirring from whatever caused her condition. Wendy? Lucy asked fearfully. Wendy looked up and everyone almost flinched at the cold look that she was giving them. It was almost unnatural that such a sweet girl could give such a dreadful look. Oi dial that glare down a bit, girl. You scaring the shit out of your friends. Dark said to Wendy. While she may not be as close as Wendy is to her friends, that doesn't mean she wants Wendy to be all alone and only have herself to talk to. That would be way too dark and depressing, even for her. Wendy seemed to snap out of whatever trance she was in and shook her head a bit. When she looked back, everyone was relieved to see Wendy back to her normal self. But that begged the question of what happened to her. Hey everyone, sorry for scaring you. She apologized as she bowed. Wendy. She looked up to see Erza looking at her impassively. What happened to you and why are you covered in blood? Wendy froze, not wanting to give the details to her, knowing this might change how they look at her. Oi, show some backbone and explain exactly what happened. Trust me, they won't abandon you. Wendy sighed as she prepared for the conversation that was coming. She walked over and placed Carla in the bed before looking back at her friends. I was walking with Carla in the gardens around the castle when we had this huge argument. This got everyone confused about what could cause the two to have an argument. They were as close as Natsu and happy. We had an argument about my father. Before you ask, the reason is that she has never trusted him. She always saw him as a worthless deadbeat that abandoned me for his selfish reasons. I never believed that and knew he had his reasons, which has always caused some friction between us. That doesn't explain the blood, Wendy. Natsu retorted. I was attacked by members of a guild in the capital. Why was this becoming a theme with her now? Blame Pops for giving us the gift of dropping bombshells. WHHHHHAAAATTTT? Everyone screamed. Yeah. When I was training with my father, he warned me that in the 7 years since Fairy Tail dropped in rankings, there are several guilds that have grown to have a vendetta against us. My dad believes one of these guilds is participating to humiliate and harm everyone in Fairy Tail. Everyone looked concerned at the news. What guild is that, Wendy? Lucy asked. Wendy sighed. My dad believes it's Raventail. Everyone's eyes widened at this. Raventail? They all shouted. But that's a dark guild. They would never show their faces here. Natsu said. Not anymore, Wendy responded. What? They all screamed again. You see, they became an official guild a few years ago. Why they never attacked us is up for debate. But my father believes he was hoping that the master and the rest of us would return so he can personally come after us. For what reason, I have no idea. And if my dad knew, he never made it apparent. All he did tell me was to not get near them and be very cautious of them. Everyone looked very disturbed by this. They knew tensions were high between the master and his son, Ivan. However, they never knew why. All the master would tell them is that his actions were a danger to the guild, and he had to excommunicate. That was it. Not even Laxus would divulge any information if he did know anything. However, there was a rumor that the falling out between the three involves the disappearance of Laxus's mother. However, it was never looked into to see if it were factual. However, no one dare mention the woman, since it was a very touchy subject between Laxus and Makarov. Especially for Laxus. The last time his mother was brought up, Laxus sent the poor bastard to the hospital for 3 months. However, all this did not stop Erza from forgetting their previous question with Wendy. Wendy, that still doesn't explain the blood, Erza said again. Wendy sighed, mentally prepared for what she was about today. I was getting to that before going off on this tangent. When we were in the garden, we felt our magic being sapped and find 5 goons surrounding me. They said that this was their master's way of saying hello to Fairy Tail and giving us a message. I continued to feel my magic being drained, and then everyone was tense at how quiet Wendy got. which made them dread what she was about to say. Wendy, what happened? Lucy asked. Everyone got even more worried when Wendy began to angrily glare at the ground, shaking in rage. The members wanted to get a much clearer message to all of you. And wanted to have fun with me, Wendy said as spat out the last words with venom. WWWWHHHHAAAATTT. Everyone roared in rage. Everyone soon began to release their magic powers in tandem. Natsu was engulfed in red-hot flames, the temperature around Grey dropped several degrees, Lisanna and Elfman were partially transforming due to their takeover magic, Lucy had a golden aura around, and Erza had several cracks appear below her as she released a potent amount of her magical power in a crimson aura. All of them looked ready to go to war with whoever this master was. Damn the consequences. If they touched Wendy, blood will be spilled in extreme retribution. And if Raven Tail was the culprit, then nothing will stop them from completely destroying them. Not Laxus. Not Makarov. No one. Wendy, did they do anything to you? Erza asked in a cold whisper that made even Natsu and Grey shiver despite their burning rage at the moment. Everyone released a sigh of relief when shook her head. I would never let those bastards touch me, and you see the result of me making them pay for that stunt they tried to pull. Everyone nodded. While they couldn't agree with her killing, the alternative was far worse, so they understood why she killed them. Erza was conflicted on the one. Wendy killed another human being. Not just one, but several. But those men were blaming her to do deplorable things to her if she did not retaliate. So could she blame her for doing what she did? She shook her head. No, she couldn't. If she did, she would be a hypocrite, especially the blood she spilled when escaping the Tower of Heaven. However, she would have a talk with Wendy's father about this. She walked and gave Wendy a tight hug that she gratefully returned. She looked at Wendy with soft brown eyes. Wendy, I am not angry about what you did. I understand why you did it, but you know we will have to report this to the master. Wendy sighed before nodding. Yeah, I know. Before anyone could respond, they heard a huge explosion from outside, and they all went to the window to see a man with a pumpkin head in the middle of the city. The grand magic games had begun.